Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of the Hindu News Analysis and dated 23rd November 2024. These are the list of the topics that I've taken in today's session for analysis. To make it much more comprehensive, what I have done is I have taken articles from Hindu newspaper as usual. In addition to that, I have also taken certain articles from other newspapers as well. For example, one article, a very important one as far as I'm concerned, from Business Line. Another important article, editorial from today's Indian Express. One more article regarding the SECI, which has been a part of let's say a scam now, which has appeared in Hindustan Times. And not to forget, I've also taken one more article from yesterday's Hindu newspaper, Hindu edition of Delhi itself. This was purely an economic article. Chetan sir has handled the CNA yesterday, or the analysis yesterday. He asked me to pick up this article because it talks about let's say certain important concepts in the exchange rate market. So in a nutshell, these are the total 10 articles that I'll be taking up for detailed discussion in today's analysis. The first 4 to 5 are very important from the mains examination perspective, and the remaining ones, factual and little bit of concept, you can use it for answering the questions in the prelims examination. Before I start the discussion, two very important announcements. After the session is over, we provide certain MCQs for your practice purposes, which will be uploaded in our Telegram channel. And those MCQs will be on the questions or will be on the topics which are covered in today's session. If you want to attempt those MCQs, all you need to do is scan this QR code, join our Telegram channel. And point number 2, if you like this initiative, do not forget to show your appreciation by hitting the like button. And if you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it now. Now, let me start the discussion. In the last couple of months, and especially in the last week, there have been multiple articles regarding what are the problems of our dependence on artificial intelligence. For example, last week, a particular piece of news was discussed very widely. That is a Gemini AI, which is owned by Google Gemini AI. In a prompt, when question was raised to this particular artificial intelligence, in return, it answered, or it basically told the person who had raised the question to die. And this raised eyebrows, this raised a lot of concern regarding how can AI go rogue in such a way and basically tell the human to commit suicide. And there was one more article couple of months ago wherein multiple researchers raised an alarm regarding the AI, which basically is pretending to be a human being. Now, in addition to those ethical issues which are being discussed in the current affairs, in today's Hindu newspaper editorial, there is an article. The article talks about democratizing artificial intelligence needs. Now, I'll club the discussion which is provided in this article with one more article which appeared in yesterday's Business Line, a World Bank report, the World Trade Organization report titled How AI Will Shape and is Shaped by International Trade. Now let me start the discussion. I'll summarize both of these articles now. Artificial intelligence in recent times has been used not only for the personal usage but also for commercial usage. Apart from the ethical issues, in recent times, there is one issue which has been raised, that is essentially the control over these AIs, which is owned by the multinational enterprises or multinational corporations. That is one very important point that we'll discuss. And the second one, the World Trade Organization report says that right now, the AIs are being developed which can be used for promotion of international trade, which will also provide benefits in terms of reducing the cost. I'll tell you how in some time, don't worry. But the AIs are being invested and developed majorly in developed countries. And when you have this kind of a concentration of AIs in developing countries, this will increase the gap between the developed as well as the developing countries, and it will also create a trade barrier. That is a second point that I'll discuss, which is mentioned in the WTO's report. Now let me start with the first one. Very recently, the prosecutors, or to be very precise, Department of Justice in USA, has submitted a report to the court there, asking the court, or basically proposing a model where Google will be asked to sell the Chrome business to somebody else in the market. Now whether that particular recommendation will be implemented or not, we will have to wait and see. But essentially the argument which has been put forward in USA, in India, and in many other countries is that the big tech companies, the multinational enterprises such as Meta or Alphabet, that is owner of Google, or Apple for that matter, etc., these big tech companies, in terms of, let's say, the power, these have huge amount of power. They wield this power in the market, ensure that the competition will be decimated, or competition will not exist, either by ensuring that they will incur losses and shut down, or by simply acquiring them. They will ensure there is no competition. And once they basically ensure that there is no competition in the market, this will basically lead to monopolization of the market. They will control the pricing, they will control the supply, they'll control the conditions, etc. regarding the market. And this argument, you can even extend it to the concept of AIs, artificial intelligence, being developed by the big tech companies. The AIs are increasingly being used in multiple commercial operations. For example, multiple companies now are using AI technology in order to get the work done much faster, in order to reduce the reliance on the human labor, etc. I'm reminded of a statement which was given by Mr. Ford. He says, all the time I want is a person who has two hands to basically give the product, do the product, manufacture the product, contribute to productivity. But what I get is two hands attached to a body, and the body has a brain. The brain keeps on thinking something else, is always disturbed, which will hamper the productivity. I'm paraphrasing the statement, but essentially the argument is multiple companies, including the multinational enterprises, have started relying more and more on machines, have started relying more and more on replacement of human capital, and in place of that, hire AI services, hire a machine, hire a robot, which will do the product, or which will manufacture or provide the services in a much faster manner. So the argument which has been put forward by the author in the first article is that the big tech companies, many of them have invested a lot of money in developing the infrastructure, in developing the codes, making the artificial intelligence, right? Let's say learn certain areas and develop very big models. For example, the latest model of Google Gemini, that particular model, if you want to develop that infrastructure, the company has spent around $200 million. Now the smaller companies or their competitors will not be able to invest so much amount of money. By nature, by developing this kind of a AI, they are ensuring that the competitors are not present in the market, especially the smaller startups will not be able to compete. And even if they want to compete, they will have to borrow huge amount of money. They will have to raise a lot of funding from investors, which in current situation is very, very difficult. And in many of the cases, these companies, what the author says is, these companies will develop certain product only to sell it to the big tech, only to basically be absorbed by the big tech company, which will again ensure that the big tech company, which is all powerful now, which controls most of the market and is already basically promoting the idea of a monopolization, will further acquire a competitor or the product of the competitor, further solidifying their position in the market. Now, what is the solution to all of this? Generally, the argument of many experts is that there should be democratization of artificial intelligence. And the idea for democratization is very simple. The democratization in any of these contexts, technology, tools, etc., it simply means the availability of this has to be made available to all or everyone. Right now, like I said, the artificial intelligence mainly is controlled by the big tech companies. Now we should ensure that this kind of a technology is available to even other companies, especially the startups in India. Especially the startups. How it can be done? Let me take a similar example to just explain to you how government can play a very important role here. Government of India evaluated the performance of the e-commerce companies and realized that these e-commerce companies such as Flipkart, Amazon, or for that matter the food delivery the companies such as Swiggy, etc., have occupied the market, and these companies are a grave threat to other smaller companies or even the smaller kirana stores. So government of India, looking at all of this, decided to democratize the e-commerce and introduce the concept of ONDC. The model of ONDC or the platform of ONDC was set up, introduced by the government, which basically democratized this model of a platform or a marketplace was available to all the other sellers or all the other suppliers in the market. So can we use this kind of a model where government will provide the infrastructure or the support for other companies to develop artificial intelligence? But the author again says even this kind of a model might be very difficult to be provided by the government. Even if the government provides, there is no guarantee that this model will be successful. Reason being, whenever a private sector will provide certain services, for example, cloud computing services, which are provided by multiple companies, what they essentially do is they will provide lot of value added services along with that. They will ensure that the customer or let's say the clients who will use their cloud computing services will get integrated services. Integrated in the sense from the start to the end, whatever steps are there, whatever, let's say, whatever measures you need to have, whatever stages are there in the whole supply chain system, all of them get integrated into one system or one, let's say, tool provided by the private sector company. I'll just give you one example to make you understand this. Let's say you order something on Swiggy. Is it very easy to open the app? Yes. Very easy to search for a product. Very easy to place an order. Easy to make a payment. If there is any problem, then it is very easy to raise a complaint and get the complaint resolved. One of the reasons why ONDC, I hope you understand this, one of the reasons why ONDC, despite it being more than a year with its implementation or let's say rollout, why it has not become very competitive, why not so successful, just like let's say Flipkart, just like Amazon, etc. Many experts point out that the customer service or let's say the customer user experience is not very pleasant over ONDC. Many of the times the orders are not accepted, or the orders are placed but rejected, orders are placed, delivery not done. How about the dispute resolution, etc., etc. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to convey here is simple. Whenever private sector companies provide anything related to, let's say, technology services, such as artificial intelligence services, they will ensure that the whole gamut of services, whole group of services that you need, that you require to conduct all the operations needed will be provided to you. So the client feedback will always be superior or will be always in favor of the companies or the private sector companies. Now, if the government provides the same kind of services, if the government through this kind of a platform or let's say the system will try to emulate the private sector model, the author says it may not be possible for the government to do that. Because the big tech companies have developed huge amount of infrastructure. They keep on collecting data from different sources. From point to point, they continuously keep on collecting multiple points of or sets of data. This kind of a model may not be easy to emulate from others' viewpoint. That is the reason the author simply says, right now, generally the approach is for artificial intelligence to be democratized, we might simply say, let's follow what the private sector is doing. Let's follow what they're doing. Rather than this, the whole game should be changed. The whole process should be changed. Because the practice which has been followed by the private sector companies or the big tech companies is that they will invest heavy amount of money, keep on collecting large sets of data. That is big data approach. They will continuously keep on sourcing data, use the data to provide services. Rather than this, we should follow a model or a problem-based approach. That is a concept of theory of change. And the model which has been proposed here is, first let's identify what is the problem. And to address this particular problem, what are the steps required? What are the measures required? This kind of a problem-solving approach method should be used by others or even by the government rather than simply following the footsteps of the private sector where they simply talk about big data approach. Any example of, let's say, the theory of change approach being followed? Basically, in terms of, let's say, investing in R&D for creating medicines, for creating drugs. You know what is the disease? Now that is a problem. You need to cure the disease. From that particular viewpoint, you will start going backwards. That is, let's say, investing in research and development, developing the drugs or the medicines which are required to treat the, let's say, the disease, to cure the disease, etc. Same approach has been followed in other areas, for example, aviation sector. For example, in, let's say, weather forecasting, etc. Why not follow the similar approach even in case of developing an artificial intelligence? This should be pushed by the government rather than simply following a private sector model where simply their focus is the big data. Collect as much data as possible and use that data to provide, let's say, the services. That should not be the approach of the government. Government should change the game by following the theory of change approach. Done? So this is one article which discusses regarding artificial intelligence democratization. Second article discusses regarding the usage of artificial intelligence in promotion of international trade. According to the report which has been published by World Trade Organization, if the artificial intelligence is available to all the countries, these countries might use this artificial intelligence technology to improve the trade. And according to this report, if this is made available to the countries like this, the overall trade, the global trade might increase by 15%. The trade might improve by 7%. But right now the concern is that the investment in the research and development of artificial intelligence, how many companies are there, where these companies are located, how much investment they are doing, how much is the investment in other countries, etc. If you look at these kind of parameters, the WTO report says there is a very clear evidence that there is a huge difference between all of these parameters between developed countries and developing countries. For example, how much of this investment in developing artificial intelligence is being done, let's say, in USA? Compare that with African countries. Compare that with, let's say, Indian companies, etc. You will realize that there is a huge amount of a difference in terms of investment. And what is the problem? If these countries, let's say developed countries, will develop artificial intelligence, then use artificial intelligence in promotion of a trade. Some of you might be thinking, sir, what is the connection between AI and the trade? Can we use AI technology to find out which is the best route to transport? Can we use AI to estimate or, let's say, expect a certain, let's say, changes in the weather? or right, let's say certain events that could have a bigger impact on exchange rate in the future, right, etc., etc. So documentation process can be made much more easier. Imports and exports can be done much faster using AI. So the concern here under the WTO report is that the developed countries might develop these AI technologies and use it to promote trade. Their exports, their trade to the international market will improve. But what about other countries? The other countries may not be in a right position or in the correct position to invest such a huge amount of money, or may not have such a developed private sector to do it on behalf of the government. That will basically that will increase the divide between the developed as well as the developing countries. And ultimately, using all of this, the report says, if the AI is available to other countries as well, you can expect the growth in international trade by 15%. But if it will remain concentrated, that is the fear. If it will remain concentrated, then rather than 7%, you might end up having a growth in international trade instead of 15%, you might end up having a growth in the international trade below 7%. It might increase the divide between developed and developing countries. It might even become a trade barrier. It might even become a trade barrier, which will hurt the scope of international trade. Right, so these are certain important things which are mentioned in the report of World Trade Organization as well as the editorials. Today is a Hindu newspaper editorial. So based on this, I've given a mains answer writing for practice. Mains answer writing assignment number 20. AI, if not properly governed and democratized, may increase the divide between the companies and also the countries. Elaborate 10 marker question in 150 words. Now before I go forward, I know pretty much some of you will have this kind of a doubt. Sir, when you discuss, you take articles from Business Line, you take articles from Hindustan Times. I don't have the subscription to all of it. How do I read these articles? You have so much of an amount of time, I cannot read all these articles. My dear, the solution to all of this is very simple. Today is Saturday, by the way. Today, right, please make a note of this. I have a Telegram channel and this is a QR code of the Telegram channel. If you scan this and join the Telegram channel every Saturday, and that's the reason I said today is Saturday. Every Saturday, I generally provide list of the articles from different newspapers, from Business Line, Business Standard, Mint, Hindustan Times, Financial Express, etc. From different newspapers, I do provide generally around 15 plus articles for the students or the learners to read, update the current affairs. Because let's be honest here, if you simply ask me, sir, I read Hindu religiously, without fail I read Hindu every day, will I be able to cover all the current affairs needed for Indian economy, either for prelims or for mains GS paper 3? My answer to that will be very doubtful. Very doubtful. So what is the solution then? I cannot ask you to read 7 newspapers every day. In that case, you will end up reading only economy part. You will not be able to read any other subject, and after the exams are over, you will directly come to my home and thrash me. So what is the solution? The rational solution to this is, I will provide you the articles. All you need to do is download and read. You will have to read. I can't read. You will have to read. I can't read on your behalf. So if you're interested, this is a link of the channel. Please do join. And second important point, I believe that a lot of students will face problems in mains answer writing as well. I'm of the firm belief, because a lot of you do not practice mains answer writing right now. But if you're writing mains examination, or if you have a intention of writing mains examination next year, you should have already started practicing mains answer writing. What is the solution for economy then? Every Saturday, I'll give you certain editorials. I will give you questions, read the editorials and write an answer for the question given. Please do that. Okay, and for that, all you need to do is scan and join the channel. Okay, let me go forward. Multiple newspaper articles in the last 2 days. in the last 2 days have come regarding the issue of the Adani group of enterprises. I have taken one editorial from today's Hindu newspaper and another editorial from today's Indian Express and the third article from Hindustan Times, which talks about SECI, because one of the entities which has been caught in the crossfire now is SECI. So there are certain points regarding SECI which have been provided. I'll discuss, but before that, what are the discussions provided in the article? Many of you will be focused on, let's say, the Adani group of enterprises. Mind you, UPSC doesn't ask you specific questions directly on entities, directly on companies, no. But it doesn't mean that you will have to ignore all the articles which have been provided regarding, let's say, the scam which has happened or which has been revealed by USA government. Reason being, multiple concepts are being discussed within these newspaper articles which are very much relevant for your examination preparation. So what are the points which have been provided in both of these articles? Let me tell you these points. Point number 1, there are distribution companies which are under the ownership of the state government. Please understand, in power sector, generally we divide the sector into different components. The different stages are: 1, generation stage, right? And the companies which are there in the generation stage are called as Gencos. Then there is a transmission stage, and then there is distribution stage. And the companies which are present in the distribution stage are called as distribution companies, or in short, DISCOMs. Now the DISCOMs can be private sector companies or they can be state government owned entities as well. Please remember this, because the DISCOMs are there in the discussion. The DISCOMs can be private sector companies, for example, in many of the cities in India, right? Mumbai for that matter. The private sector companies are involved in the distribution of electricity, right? They are involved in the distribution of electricity. In many other states also, private sector entities are allowed to distribute electricity. Most of the entities are state government companies or entities under the state government, but some of them are private sector entities as well. So the DISCOMs need to purchase electricity and supply the electricity to, right, let's say, consumers. The consumer can be a household such as you and me, that is retail consumers. The consumer can also be a commercial entity such as a shopping mall or a manufacturing entity. In case of India, the government of India has been promoting renewable energy segment. That should be very clear. The government has been promoting renewable energy. This started in the last decade when Mr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. To begin with, they launched an initiative by the name of Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Renewal Mission. Under this initiative, the government initially targeted a renewable energy capacity of 20 gigawatts. Later, that 20 gigawatts was increased to 100 gigawatts. It was increased beyond 100 gigawatts to 175 gigawatts. And now, by 2030, the government of India has a target of having 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. 500 gigawatts. And out of this 500 gigawatts, the government has a target of achieving 280 gigawatts of solar energy. It has a target of 200 gigawatts of solar energy, 280 gigawatts of solar energy capacity by 2030. This is the second point. Third point. Now, because the distribution companies will have to procure and sell the renewable energy, let's say solar energy, the government of India back in the year 2011 set up SECI. SECI was established in 2011 by the government. SECI basically stands for Solar Energy Corporation of India. Okay, SECI was established in 2011 by Government of India. And what was the role of SECI? SECI, on behalf of the distribution companies, on behalf of the DISCOMs, would purchase electricity from various private sector companies and essentially supply it to the DISCOMs. Now, I'm clubbing, by the way, the first article here, I'll write the numbers so that you understand. I'm clubbing the info that is given in the first article, second article, as well as the third article. Okay, let me summarize all of it together rather than looking at as individual articles. So this is basically the model. What has been the problem? Right, listen to me very carefully. The SECI, which is a government-owned entity which functions under the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, many experts say has a flawed approach, has a flawed model regarding this. What is the flaw here? SECI first purchases electricity, enters into agreement with, let's say, private sector company for purchasing electricity, then tries to sell it to a distribution company. Is the logic okay? I'll repeat it again. SECI first enters into agreement with private sector company, saying that they will sell the electricity, solar electricity at price XYZ rupees, and then tries to find a distribution company which will purchase this electricity. Many experts say this is a flawed approach. This is a wrong approach. And before you start asking, sir, why it is flawed? Generally, that is how every market operates. For example, first from the farmer, onion will be purchased, then onion will be sold to the consumer. Same model is being followed here. My dear, there is a difference in the product. There is a difference in the commodity that you are talking about. In this example, it is electricity. In the other example, it is an onion, which is right a day-to-day consumption, or which has a day-to-day consumption requirement. What is the problem here? The problem is, if SECI enters into an agreement with the private sector entity to purchase electricity in the month of January, immediately the distribution companies are not lining up, are not queuing up to purchase this electricity. They might search for this renewable energy electricity in the month of October of the same year. They might start searching for this kind of renewable energy electricity in the month of August of that particular year. So I hope you understand this. SECI has entered into an agreement with a private sector company in January. But by the month of August, what if there is one more company with whom SECI has signed an agreement to purchase electricity, but at a lesser price compared to the first private sector company? Just to give you the context, imagine the first private sector company agrees to sell electricity at 2.50 rupees per unit. And in the month of March, SECI has signed one more agreement with the second private sector company, where the second company has agreed to sell electricity at 2.25 rupees or 2.40 rupees or even 2.45 rupees. Doesn't matter, as long as it is lesser than 2.50 rupees. And generally this happens. This happens, by the way. Now look at this. If this DISCOM wants to purchase electricity, it would want to get the electricity supplied from the second company and not from the first company. Because obviously the distribution company wants to purchase electricity at a lesser price, not at a higher price. So 2.30 rupees, 2.40 rupees, it will work for this DISCOM as long as it is not paying 2.50 rupees, which was quoted by the first company. As a result of this, now look at the outcome of this model. First company which has entered into agreement in the beginning of the year now will not find any takers. No DISCOM will be interested in purchasing electricity from the first company. And that is exactly what led to, according to the charges, this is exactly what led to bribing of the private sector company to the government officials in the SECI. And it's not that, again, I hope you understand, it's not that only the officials at SECI were at fault, according to the charges, by the way. Even the officials at the state government level were also privy to all of this information. They knew that this was happening. Even they were given certain amount of bribe amount and they accepted all of these agreements. But what is the problem with all of this? Some of you might be thinking, agreed, right? What you explained model, I agreed. But what is the problem? Why USA is worried about it? Listen to the next point very carefully. There is an act in the USA by the name of Foreign Corrupt Policies Act. Foreign Corrupt Policies, practices, not policies, practices. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. This is one act which has been used by the prosecutors in the United States of America and even the market regulator of USA to target multiple companies which are registered in USA whenever they are involved in corrupt practices outside USA. Please remember this. Please remember this. Many of you will be wondering why USA is worried about even if there is a bribery. Let's assume there is a bribery. Why is the USA government worried about what is happening in India? Why should they basically talk about India? Is it not against the sovereignty of India, etc.? My dear, listen to me. This is not the first time that the USA prosecutors have targeted the multinational enterprises. It has been done by USA prosecutors earlier as well. Right? In multiple companies, they have done this. Point number 2, they say they have every right to do this because the Adani company, the Adani Power, here is registered in USA. It has raised a lot of money from investors of USA. So when you are, right, let's say the government of USA says this, when the foreign company is coming to our country and is, right, pitching the investment to my investors, taking money from my investors and is registered in my country, of course, I will have the right to evaluate whether they are involved in shady practices in other markets. Because if they are involved in the shady practices in other markets, there will come a point of time when there can be action against such company in the foreign market. If there is action and they incur losses and they are shutting down, my investors will suffer. And that is the precise reason why FCPA provisions have been used in the context of Adani Group of Enterprises. This is point number 2. Point number 3. Should there be an investigation? Don't make it a political argument. Should there be an investigation? Now please understand, Supreme Court of India. Earlier, there was a petition in the Supreme Court of India asking the Supreme Court of India to direct an agency to conduct investigations into the practices which have been alleged to have been done by Adani Group of Enterprises. Supreme Court of India said the investigations which are being conducted by SEBI, we are happy with that. Let them complete their investigation, let them submit the report, then we will have a look at it. So the petition to direct CBI to investigate into Adani Group of Enterprises has not been entertained by Supreme Court of India. It was rejected. Please remember that. Now after that, there have been multiple, let's say, allegations made, multiple revelations which again have called for a detailed investigation into the practices of Adani Group of Enterprises. Now whether you're in favor of it or against it doesn't matter. Please remember this. There should be transparency in regulatory functioning as well as the practices of the private sector companies. Reason being, 1, you might have invested in the shares of the private sector companies. You might have invested in the bonds of private sector companies. In the last 2 to 3 days, after this news was published or after this became public, what has happened to the market capitalization? What has happened to the investor confidence? So the investors' investments, the value of the investments have taken a hit. There is no doubt regarding that. So that is point number 1. Point number 2, it is not just about a private sector company, it is about image of corporate India in the global market. And that is what exactly is argued by Sanjay Baru, Mr. Sanjay Baru in this editorial. It's not about one company, whether the size of the company is very large, how close it is to government. No, the argument is not about that. The argument is bigger one, that is the credibility of corporate India in the global market. There are certain very important, pertinent points which have been raised by the author in this article. For example, we allow the commercial enterprises, that is the private sector companies, to go outside India, borrow from the external market. There is a tool called as External Commercial Borrowing, ECB, External Commercial Borrowing. we allow the companies to go outside India and borrow from the external market. Now in this case, Adani group of enterprises, that is Adani Energy, has gone to USA, borrowed from USA, has raised money from the USA market. And this money they have used to invest in multiple infrastructure projects. Multiple projects have been funded by borrowing this way. What the author says is, the government is basically using this kind of a, let's say, spread of the companies in the multiple countries, that is multinational enterprises from India are spreading their wings, are entering into other countries. This is basically a globalization which has been fueled, which has been funded by Western markets. Is my statement clear? I'll repeat it again. When Indian companies will borrow, will take money from the foreign market and invest in the foreign market, that is basically globalization. So the multinational corporations from India, the globalization that they're doing, it is Western funded. It is Western funded. And when you compare, let's say, countries such as India and countries such as China, you will see a very different objective, very different practices followed by both of these countries. In India, we borrow, we invest. Western funded globalization. And on the other side, China, one of the largest economies in the world, the investments that they do in the external market is driven by government. It is government funded. And what is the problem with Western funded globalization followed by Indian multinational corporation? It is a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. Meaning, no doubt you will get access to huge amount of capital. You'll get access to huge amount of capital. You'll be allowed to borrow, yes. But at the same point of time, they will have certain control or they will have certain policies of their own using which they can hit your credibility. They can raise questions regarding your practices. They might even take action against you. Best example is the action which has been initiated against two companies in India by USA under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And when this kind of action is initiated, when this is done, it will not only just hamper the image of this company, it will hamper the image of other Indian corporate sector entities which want to enter into other markets, which want to expand their operations not only in India but also across the globe. So the concern which has been raised by the author in this article is this kind of a globalization has a problem. This kind of a globalization is problematic. Point number one. Point number two, whenever governments will side with the businessman, and again, not specifically talking about this government, don't worry. Multiple times it has been seen that the governments generally support one or the other group of companies. It has happened in the past, it has been observed. The problem is that when the corrupt practices do take place, or if there is such a kind of a crony capitalism, there's a term called as crony capitalism. Crony capitalism essentially means the businessmen or certain business houses are in very close touch with the government. Right? Most of the times government will favor one group of companies or another group of companies. That is a crony capitalism. That will lead to a lot of corruption in the system. That will lead to tampering of the image of the governance as well. That is one more problem. And that's a reason you must have seen in recent times, the ruling political party is being forced to defend, right, against a business company's allegations. It is being forced. The ruling party is giving statements in basically saying that, right, let's say the rule of law will take its own course, etc., etc. It should not be the duty of the government or a ruling party to do that. This will happen when there is, right, this kind of a crony capitalism. That is one more concern which has been raised by the author here. And the third point, let me pick up one more aspect to this. Let me add one more aspect to this. Mr. Viral Acharya. I hope all of you heard of this expert, Mr. Viral Acharya, former Deputy Governor of RBI. He also raised a pertinent point some months ago saying that there are 5 companies in India, 5 group of companies in India which control pricing, which control a majority of the supply of goods and services. You will have to dismantle it. You will have to break that particular grouping. Right, and by the way, Adani was one of the group of companies which was named by Mr. Viral Acharya. Okay, so these are certain things. Please make a note of all of these particular points, and I would advise all of you, please read from these articles as well, because I know you generally read articles from Hindu newspaper, nothing wrong with that, but there is also nothing wrong to keep on adding information by reading from other sources as well. Done? So these are certain things which have been mentioned in different newspaper articles regarding what is happening in current affairs. Now there is a question regarding this. Have a look at it. Try to solve it. If not, don't worry. At the end of the session, I'll solve it for you. All the discoms in India are government-owned entities. India has set a target of achieving a total 500 gigawatts of solar energy capacity by 2030. India has been re-elected as president of ISA, International Solar Alliance. 3 statements. How many of the statements are true? Try it. Don't worry if you're not able to solve it. I'll give you the answer at the end of the session. Next article. Socialism in India is a means of a welfare state, not a dictatorial dogma. A statement which has been given by the Chief Justice of India, Justice Sanjeev Khanna. Now, what is the issue all about? The Constitution of India was amended under 42nd Amendment Act. And with this amendment that was introduced in 1976, very important changes were introduced in the Constitution, and some of them were basically the amendment to the preamble. The amendment to the preamble of Indian Constitution. Before this amendment was done, in the preamble, only 3 terms were mentioned. That is democratic, right? The term democratic was mentioned. With addition to these terms such as a democratic, republic, etc. Now, 2 more terms, that is secular and socialist. Secular and socialist were also added. Now, against this amendment, there were multiple petitions which were filed in the Supreme Court of India. Earlier also they have been filed, and very recently also multiple petitions have been filed from multiple, right, let's say people. Now, the Chief Justice of India or the bench of Supreme Court of India has gave certain, right, oral statements. It is yet to issue any kind of a closing order. It is yet to issue the final order. It has simply given certain statements or observations regarding the, let's say, the petitions which have been filed in the Supreme Court. What were the arguments which were put forward by the, let's say, the applications? What were their arguments? Their argument is the inclusion of the term, right, socialist and secular is wrong. The Supreme Court of India will have to have a relook at it. A larger bench has to be set up which will have a relook, and right, we want these particular terms to be removed. Right, it was their contention. Second one was, when the Constituent Assembly adopted the preamble, when they adopted the preamble, that is basically 1949, on 26th November 1949, when the Constituent Assembly adopted the preamble, it was a statement, it was adopted by the preamble. How can the government of India later change the preamble? It is a factual statement. How can the government change the preamble? It should not be allowed, because it was done later in 1976. It should be nullified. Third argument is, this was a time period when emergency was imposed. When the emergency was imposed, and this was a time period when the session or when the tenure of the parliament was extended and government of India amended the constitution, which is, according to the petition, which is a fraud committed on the Constitution of India. So these were some of the arguments which were put forward by the applicants, which asked the Supreme Court of India to set up a larger bench, constitutional bench, and have a review of these amendments. That is specifically the amendments under the 42nd CAA. what were the arguments what were the statements given by Supreme Court of India regarding this? The CJI stated that, point number 1, the 42nd Amendment, which is 1976, which was introduced in 1976, has already been reviewed multiple times. Multiple times the review has been done. Okay, that is point number 1. Second one, you are talking about the term socialism and secularism. The argument of CJI or the statement of CJI clarified that the technical term or the technical meaning of socialism is different and what has been adopted in India is different. That is, whenever you talk about socialism and when you read about socialism under economy, you will come across this. That is, socialism means the factors of production or the means of production are owned by the people. People will elect the government, government will formulate a policy. Whereas in case of, let's say, capitalism, the means of production are privately owned, that is owned by businessmen. They will invest, they will reap the benefits in the form of profits. So this idea of a socialism, what is mentioned in the textbook is not the same as what we are following in India. CJ says socialism has been implemented in India. It is part of the basic structure of the constitution, and moreover, even though there is a term socialism in the preamble, it has not prevented private sector in participation. Private sector is performing very well in India. We have been able to reap the benefits or get the benefits from this kind of a private sector participation, and even individuals have been able to get the benefit under the model of, let's say, or even though there is a term socialism in the preamble. That is one more argument. And the third argument is, whatever was done by the government during emergency, we cannot simply nullify everything. You cannot nullify everything that was done by the government during emergency, because under Article 368, that is which provides power to the government to amend the constitution, they have undertaken those operations. So you cannot simply nullify all the things that have been done by the government under Article 368 during the emergency. So these were some of the arguments which were put forward by the Chief Justice of India in contention or against the arguments which have been put forward by multiple petitioners, which have called for a larger bench under the Supreme Court to review the 42nd CAA. Okay. Next one. Next article, Supreme Court of India, it basically has found certain problems with GRAP 4 curbs which have been implemented in Delhi. Now, in the last couple of months, one news which has been there in the constants, that is multiple times on almost all the days, is the pollution in Delhi. Pollution in Delhi. And two articles which have come in today's newspaper regarding the same thing is one, the farmers using evasive techniques to burn the stubble. I'll discuss that. And the second one is this article. With the air quality index becoming very, very bad or becoming very, let's say severe for the city of Delhi, the government was to implement the Graded Action Plan 4 or the fourth phase of GRAP. Under this, multiple restrictions are imposed on multiple economic activities which are supposed to be conducted, which contribute to air pollution. In Delhi. For example, one of the restrictions that would come into place under GRAP 4 will be not allowing the commercial vehicles from other areas to enter into Delhi. Because according to the petitioners, basically 50% of the air pollution that is happening in Delhi is contributed by these vehicles, the commercial transport vehicles which will pass through Delhi to enter into other states to carry certain products, goods, etc. So under the GRAP 4, the state was supposed to implement certain measures at various checkpoints which will allow the vehicles to enter into Delhi. These checkpoints were supposed to be manned by the Delhi government and Delhi police. The Supreme Court now says out of 113 checkpoints, or entry points. Out of 113 entry points into Delhi, in many of these entry points, there was no personnel that was placed to check the entry of the vehicles, to stop the entry of these vehicles which contribute to pollution in Delhi. And Supreme Court of India now says, we want an answer from the government. We want an answer. They have not followed our guidelines. They have not followed what was supposed to be done by them. Their duty is under GRAP. So we want an answer from them. We will seek an answer. In addition to that, they have also asked, right, CAQM, that is a Center for Air Quality Management, which has argued that now the pollution in Delhi has come down and the Supreme Court of India can reduce, right, let's say the implementation of the GRAP from level 4 to a lower level. In fact, in today's newspaper, Indian Express itself, they have mentioned that air quality index compared to, let's say, last 1 week, the severity has actually come down now. The severity has actually come down. So the CQAM has approached Supreme Court of India asking reduction in the GRAP levels. Supreme Court of India now says they have appointed commissioners. That is, 13 young advocates have been appointed by Supreme Court of India as commissioners. They will have to go to these entry points, find out what is the severity of the air quality and report it back to the Supreme Court. Based on the, right, let's say based on the report or based on the submission of these commissioners, Supreme Court says on 25th November, I'll take a call. We will decide, should we reduce the GRAP level application or should we continue at the grade 4 itself? So this is one article regarding GRAP 4 application in Delhi. Second one is stubble burning. Stubble burning. There's a very interesting observation that has been reported by NASA, which has been accepted, and this submission has been done to Supreme Court now. This has been accepted by ISRO as well. What is the issue here? The number of fires which are lit by the farmers, stubble burning cases. There is a contention that the numbers which have been reported by the CAQM are much lower than the actual number of fires which are lit by the farmers. Why there is a contention like this? Why should there be a difference like this? And first and foremost, on what basis the report or these number of fires are reported? Until now, according to the database, what CAQM used to do is, they used to collect the number of fires which are lit by the farmers in the northern region part of India from NASA. Understand this. They used to collect this information from NASA. And NASA used to provide this information based on observations done by the polar satellite. In a nutshell, imagine this is Earth. From pole to pole when the satellite goes, these are called as polar satellite. So these polar satellite of NASA used to cross India, this particular region, generally between 10 to 1. Some of the sources said, right, 1:30 to 2 also, don't worry. But essentially this was the time period. When these satellites will cross the region, then the farmers started burning the stubble. And why was that? Now the farmers realized that this is the time of the day when the NASA satellite is basically, right, observing us. It is observing how many fires are lit. So what they did was, they basically tried to overcome this particular problem and started lighting fires or burning stubble after 2 p.m. And that is the precise reason the NASA now says there is a problem with this particular data, because we have not been able to capture all the fires which are lit by the farmers. Even ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, even ISRO has accepted, yes, there is undercounting of the fires. And that's the reason you will see that there is a difference between the number of fires reported by the CAQM and the estimates which have been provided by many other agencies or organizations. So what is the solution then? What is the solution? ISRO says, instead of using the polar satellites to get the stubble burning numbers, now we will start using geostationary satellite. right? We will start using geospatial satellites. That is basically which will go according to the equator, around the equator like this or over the equator. We will start using those satellites to get how much or how many fires are lit by the farmers. That will be a better methodology to collect, and according to that make policies to prevent stubble burning in India. And regarding this, what is the issue in the newspaper? What is the issue which has been reported apart from this? Supreme Court of India now has asked for the minutes of the meeting of CAQM, because according to a petition at Supreme Court, they say that CAQM already knew this. They knew this, but they did not report. They gave something else as a report to the Supreme Court, which is not acceptable. So now, right, Supreme Court of India has asked CAQM to file data on paddy that is burnt in Punjab as well as Haryana based on a different methodology. So this is one more article. Next article, which appeared in yesterday's Hindu newspaper, Chief Economic Advisor Nageswaran asks India Inc. not to seek protective cover of weak currency. Very important article as far as I am concerned. Why? Listen to me very carefully. The argument which has been put forward by Chief Economic Advisor is that Indian companies, rather than investing and developing, let's say, skilled human labor, rather than investing in research and development, rather than focusing on other issues which are holding them back from exporting more and more, generally focus on value of Indian rupee. Value of Indian rupee. How so? With rupee depreciation, please remember, with rupee depreciation, exports become competitive. Please remember this. With rupee depreciation, exports become competitive. And the argument of Chief Economic Advisor is, you cannot solely be dependent on rupee depreciation to hide that you are not investing in R&D. Right? You cannot do that, because you can increase your export competitiveness by having better technology. You can increase the productivity of the labor by training the labor. You can do so many things. But apart from that, what you generally do is, you will try to leverage the idea of a export competitiveness by focusing on the value of rupee. You're betting against the value of rupee. And the problem with that is, Indian rupee, the price of that or the exchange rate of that is not stable. It is volatile. Volatile in the sense, because from 1993 we have been following a concept of a floating exchange rate. There are multiple factors in the international market as well as a domestic market which will influence what is the exchange rate in India. So please don't hide behind the value of exchange rate. Don't hide behind the exchange rate, because multiple factors will influence exchange rate. Do not be over dependent on that. Invest more in R&D. Invest more in labor, etc. That will automatically increase your export competitiveness. And that kind of approach is always providing a long-term solution. It is always a long-term solution, because the exchange rate is very volatile. And this is one point. And the CA also says the tool of exchange rate, that is the weaker currency, tool of weaker currency should be part of a bigger arsenal. It should be part of group of measures. That should not be the only measure. It should be part of a bigger group of measures, or a group of measures which can be utilized to promote exports over a period of time. It should not be the only measure which should be targeted by the government as well as the private sector. And what do I mean by it should be part of a policy or arsenal? For example, if a country will devalue, I repeat, if a country will devalue their currency, automatically export competitiveness will increase. Export competitiveness will automatically increase. But that should not be the only approach to promote export competitiveness. Because if you do that, other countries will retaliate. Other countries will also start devaluing their currency. Then you're basically into a currency war. And that's the reason the CA says many countries are using this concept of an exchange rate or weaker domestic currency. And as a result of this, you will always keep on saying reactions and counter reactions in the global market which will influence exchange rate policy. So what is the solution? What is the way forward which has been recommended by CEA? As already mentioned, the private sector should focus on investment in R&D. Right? Private sector should focus on developing labor. Right? Have very good quality labor. Third one, CEA, not in this lecture but in another statement also stated that Reserve Bank of India should also think of changing its approach towards inflation targeting so that interest rates are adjusted in a much better way, which will reflect the reality of the global market. Right? That is the third recommendation. And the fourth recommendation that has been provided by Chief Economic Advisor earlier, not now, is basically to look at the tariff policy. Government should look at the tariff policies. Okay, so these are some of the recommendations which have been provided by Chief Economic Advisor and also the statements given by CEA to promote competitiveness in the global market. Right, based on this, I have given an MCQ here. Please have a look at the MCQ. If you do not know the answer, wait for some more time, I'll give you the solution. Which of the following are likely to weaken the domestic currency? And if you're wondering, sir, from which angle are we looking at? Are we talking about USA's currency? Are we talking about Indian currency? I have given the right explanation here from the context of Indian rupee. Increasing twin deficits, federal tapering, and increasing inflation rate in India. Try it. If you do not know the answer, don't panic. I'll tell you the answer in some time. Okay. Right, next article. Design changes likely to hike the cost of Vande Bharat sleeper train production. What are the important points? Although lot of data is given in the article, don't worry. This same article has appeared in Indian Express. Same article has appeared even in the business line. Because please understand, right, this article has basically this article is from the viewpoint of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, which is basically promoting this infrastructure project. Now listen to me very carefully. There is a joint venture between a Russian company and an Indian company by the name of Kinet, K-I-N-E-T. It's a joint venture from an Indian company, that is, basically we have a Indian PSU, Rail Vikas Nigam. And there is also a Russian company involved here, that is a TMH, Transmash Holding. Right, so two companies, one Russian company and one Indian company. It's a joint venture, right, that is named Kinet. Now, Government of India, that is through railways, is promoting the sleeper coaches of Vande Bharat train. This particular project or this tender has been allocated to Kinet. Okay, so that is railways has allocated a project or a tender to company Kinet. According to the tender, they are supposed to provide 1,920 coaches, and they will also provide maintenance and service for the next 35 years. And this agreement has been signed. Name of the agreement is Manufacturing cum Maintenance Agreement. Okay, Manufacturing cum Maintenance Agreement. The short form of this, I'm writing this because suddenly this can be asked in prelims. MCMA. Right, so this is the agreement which has been signed. It was signed last year, September 2023. Now, what is given in the newspaper? Let's focus on the newspaper information. Again, in a nutshell, all the data is not relevant. The agreement was signed in September 2023. It's been 14 months and even right now, the design is not yet finalized by the Ministry of Railways. Why? The company, that is the Russian company, says, according to what was told to us, based on the requirements which were submitted earlier, we prepared a design and we have submitted the design to the ministry. And this year, the Ministry of Railways says they want a different design, not the design which has been submitted from the Russian counterpart. The argument which has been put forward is we want one more toilet in the coach and we want a pantry, we want a place for this, etc., etc. Because of these kind of requirements or additional requirements which have been put forward from Indian side, now the Russian company says we will have to go back to the drawing board. We have done that. We have changed the design, and it is not easy to change the design. There are so many components that we need to consider. We have changed the design. We have submitted the new design to the ministry. We are yet to get any kind of a final approval. And what is the problem with this? One, when you ask a company to redesign something, they will have to use more resources now. More resources means the timing taken for creating the design will increase. This will delay the implementation of the project. And this is generally seen in most of the infrastructure projects in India. For example, I'll take one more train project here, bullet train project. The bullet train project has overshot its cost, has overshot the time period which was supposed to be implemented. Right now, the bullet train project was supposed to be operational in India, but government now says the cost of this bullet train project has short our estimation or overshot our estimations. It was expected to cost us 1.1 lakh crore rupees. The latest estimate is 1.78 lakh crore rupees, from 1.1 to 1.78. It was supposed to be operational by now. It is going to be conducted in pilot phase. It is going to start operations in 26. And after that, we'll conduct the runs, and maybe from 28 and 29, we'll start the complete operations. So time overruns, cost overruns will take place. Right, so these are some of the things which have been mentioned in the article regarding the delay in Vande Bharat sleeper train project. Okay, now these are the 10 articles I wanted to cover. Let me give you the key answers to 2 MCQs that I have given earlier. Consider the following statements. All the discoms in India are government owned entities. I have given you the answer already. Absolutely no. Private sector entities are also involved in the distribution companies or as a distribution companies. For example, Tata Power, Adani Power, etc. India has set a target of achieving a total of 500 gigawatts of solar energy capacity by 2030. No. Right? Some of you will simply look at the number 500 gigawatts and say yes. No. It is solar. Right? Solar is 280 gigawatts. Total is 500. Third, India has been re-elected as a president of ISA. This is absolutely correct. This was one more important piece of news which was reported in multiple newspapers in the last 1 month. Be very, very careful. Now, I have got a question to all of you. What is the tenure of the India as a president under ISA? And second, how many countries are there under ISA? These are the 2 questions for your assignment. Do look at it and do let me know what is the right answer in the comment section. So right option for this question will be option A. Only one of the statement is true. Second one, which of the following are likely to weaken the domestic currency? Increasing twin deficit. Twin deficit essentially is the current account deficit as well as fiscal deficit. I'm presuming that all of you know what is the concept of a twin deficit. If you do not know it, all you need to do is just do let me know in the comment section if you want a video on twin deficits. Only on twin deficits. So one of them is current account deficit. So if current account deficit widens, it essentially means more and more dollars are going out. If more dollars are going out, more of rupees is being supplied in the forex market. Supply of rupee increases, rupee will weaken. Rupee value will fall down. Yes. Federal tapering basically refers to increasing interest rates in USA. If USA will increase the interest rate, more and more dollars will go out of India. Investors will take out the dollars. That will also mean supply of rupees in the forex market increases. Rupee will weaken. Third one, increasing inflation in India. The rule, right, or generally the idea is that if a country experiences higher inflation rate, the purchasing power of domestic currency for domestic goods will go down. And this might basically lead to more and more imports coming into that particular country. That will lead again to the higher supply of rupees, which will increase the, which will decrease the value of domestic currency, weaken the value of domestic currency. Third is also correct. Right option for this question will be option C. All the three statements are true. So these are the 10 articles as well as the questions I wanted to discuss with you people from these 10 articles. Before I wind up, again to reiterate, please do join the Telegram channel. Questions on these articles, other questions, not the same ones, will be given in the Telegram channel. Please do solve it. That will basically reinforce what you have learned in the class today. And second, if you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. And point number 3, if you want weekly updates from different newspapers regarding Indian economy news, all you need to do is scan the QR code that I've already given to you, join the Telegram channel, start learning, updating your current affairs from today itself. So that's it from my side. See you tomorrow again at the same time. Till then, take care. Have a great day.